Here in the United States, the federal government conducts a national census every 10 years to provide an accurate count of the total amount of people who reside in the country. The census doesn't just count the number of people living in a household, but it also asks, what is this person's name? What is their phone number? What is their age and date of birth? What is their race? Is this person a male or a female? In March 2018, Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross released a memo announcing the reinstatement of the following question: is this person a citizen of the United States? And the Democrats lost their fucking minds. The national census is important because the data helps the federal government decide how to distribute billions of dollars in funds and assistance to states and localities. But don't just take my word for it.
This is George Francisco of Alien Nation. You're going to have a part in the 1990 official U.S. government census. The census comes once every 10 years. The census tells us how many of us there are and a lot about our standard of living. Rosas ot sexo, which means, please, answer the census.
You can trust this guy. He's from the planet Tenkton. Anyway, the census also determines the number of seats each state has in the House of Representatives. Each congressional district is currently apportioned by total population. So the more populous a state is, the more congressional seats it has. For example, a sparsely populated state like Wyoming only has one congressional seat, but a populous state like California currently has 53 congressional seats. When the census shows that there has been a population decline, a state can lose congressional seats. For example, New York lost 2 seats in 2010. And studies estimate that New York could lose 2 more seats after the 2020 census. Now, citizens and non-citizens alike are included when apportioning congressional seats, and that's not fair to states with lower non-citizen populations.
If you have people who are not supposed to be in the country but are residing in a state, the state has every incentive for them to be counted. So it means more money for the state. It means more political influence in Congress. It means more political influence over who elects the president. So the incentives are certainly all on one side for the state with the large illegal population.
Democrats and advocacy groups say that including the citizenship question on the census will scare immigrants and illegal immigrants from fully completing each form or taking part in the census at all. And that could lead to an undercount. States with a large illegal immigration population could potentially lose congressional seats.
Adding such a question raises the serious risk of depressing the response rates of immigrants and other minority communities, leading to an undercount of their numbers.
An immigrant who is in the country legally will not take issue with checking a box off about their status. And I have no idea what he's talking about when he mentions that minority communities will be scared off by the question. Besides, the government can't use census information for immigration enforcement against unauthorized citizens because the results are kept secret by law. Regardless, many illegal immigrants won't answer the census because if you're not supposed to be here, you might want to stay under the radar and not volunteer information. As an illegal immigrant, I was fine with giving the government my name, phone number, and date of birth, but asking me if I'm a citizen, well, that's where I draw the line. I should note that when illegal immigrants do fill out the census, they put false citizenship information about 30% of the time. So then, what's the point of putting the question on the census if so many people are going to lie about it? The Census Bureau could figure out who is lying or not by cross-referencing the data from each census form with as many federal and state records that they can get access to. This would get the most accurate count of citizens, non-citizens, and unauthorized citizens living in the United States ever. In December 2017, the Department of Justice sent a request to the Census Bureau to reinstate the citizenship question so that it can better enforce federal voting rights laws.
Getting better information regarding the citizen and non-citizen population of our country has significant implications for the fair and accurate enforcement of the Voting Rights Act, the distribution of members of the House of Representatives in the apportionment process, and in providing for equal voting power among qualified voters.
In response to the DOJ's request, the Commerce Department initiated a review process. Once complete, Secretary Ross determined that it would reinstate the citizenship question. And he said reinstate because this is not a brand new question. From 1870 to 1950, the census consistently included questions regarding citizenship status. And while the question did not appear in 1960, it was reinstated on a long-form census in 1970, 1980, 1990, and 2000. However, only about 1 in 6 households were asked about their citizenship status. And since 2005, it's appeared on the American Community Survey, which is essentially a replacement for the now discontinued long-form census.
Without thorough testing and analysis, the effects of adding a citizenship question are unknown and open to an array of dangerous consequences.
Any change to the census, any addition of a question, usually takes 5 years of a process to make sure that it is vetted, that every word has been tested, to make sure that it is effective, because it is one of the most important things that we do.
An anti-immigrant policy coming out of this White House, and it's designed to intimidate and instill fear.
This is all hyperbole. You don't need to vet or test a question that has already been asked by the Census Bureau in one way or another for over a century.
I want to know about the racism.
Okay, so because the Trump administration wants it on the census, it must be for nefarious reasons, right?
Even if through all of the questions there's some alleged nefarious purpose today, I want the question to be asked. I just want to know. As a member of Congress, I'd like to know how many citizens we have in the United States of America. And I'd like to know who's here, who is not a citizen.
And Congressman Roy is right. The United States doesn't have accurate data on how many people are living here unauthorized. Pew Research estimates that in 2005, there were 10.7 million unauthorized immigrants living in the US, and that in 2017, there were only 10.5 million. Yet, in that same time period, the United States population rose 10.2%, and we're expected to believe that there's been a decline in how many unauthorized immigrants are residing in the United States? That doesn't make any sense. And that's why we need an accurate count. Once Secretary Ross made the decision to reinstate the question, Democrats and advocacy groups sprung into action. 2 groups of plaintiffs filed suit in federal district court in New York, challenging the decision on several grounds, claiming that putting the question on the census was unconstitutional and that it violated the Administrative Procedure Act. The federal district court ruled in favor of the plaintiffs and ordered the question removed from the census. It ruled that the question itself was not unconstitutional, but the excuse that it was needed to enforce voting rights laws, well, they weren't buying it. So the Supreme Court agreed to take up the case, and in June 2019, they handed down their decision. It's a little complicated, but basically the court, in an opinion by Chief Justice Roberts, agreed with the lower court's opinion that the reason to add the question was arbitrary. Unlike a typical case in which an agency may have both stated and unstated reasons for a decision, here the VRA enforcement rationale, the sole stated reason, seems to have been contrived. Ouch. However, the court is saying that the Commerce Department could still put the question on the census if it gave a better/truer explanation of why they were putting it on. And with that, the court sent back the case. All the Trump administration needed to say was that the question had been asked in a limited capacity by the Census Bureau for decades. It's been tested extensively, and now is the time to expand it to all census respondents because the government needs to know, and has the right to know, how many non-citizens are living in the US. But instead, the Trump administration overthought it and fucked it up. As always, thanks for watching, sharing, and hitting that like button. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. Check out the links in the description, and maybe go visit my merch store and buy a fun t-shirt. Thanks again for all your support, and I hope to see you next time.
Will the gentleman yield, please?
No, ma'am. I've got to finish my question. Thank you, though. You know, look, I admit it. You caught me. I do. I want to know. Unlike my Democrat colleagues, I'd like to know, and I think the people of Texas would like to know. I cannot understand in what universe our leaders would not want to know who's a citizen and who's not. The common sense question of asking citizenship on the census. The American people are watching.